Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field report. Wow, wasn't that dust storm on Friday a wild thing? If you ever tried to imagine what the Dust Bowl was like in the 1930s, all you had to be was in central Illinois Friday afternoon. You didn't need your imagination, you got to live it. Now granted, it was only a few hours, unlike years in the Dust Bowl. It blew soil, it blew residue, it blew trees over, did property damage in some areas. Some of our most precious McLean County soil was deposited in Lake Michigan. The dust storm has generated several service calls. These cornfields look like they received a frost. They're off-color, shredded, kind of black looking. In some cases, the soybeans were sheared off at the ground. In most cases, with corn, it's mainly cosmetic, and the corn will bounce back. In some cases, corn was covered up. It will not come back. It'll need to be replanted. This was mainly where grass strips were, or fence lines that worked like snow fence and piled up the dirt on the corn. Other areas were buried in residue, and we may need to burn that off before we can replant that. This sandblasted crop looks a little rough. It will recover, but I would recommend holding off on any post-spraying until you show signs of a robust recovery. There are a couple of things to think about. Some of these fields were sprayed with a herbicide and some surface-applied nitrogen that did not receive a rain to wash it off the residue, wash it into the soil, and get it activated. If large amounts of soil, and especially residue, blew out of these fields, it took with them both your nitrogen and your herbicide. We'll need to keep an eye on these fields for weed escapes and loss of nitrogen. We can make some guess on the nitrogen with the nitrate testing, but herbicide loss will only show up in weed escapes. Guys, we need to step back and take a minute to evaluate what we just witnessed. Our soil, a quarter mile in the air, blowing all the way to Chicago, closing roads, causing accidents. Yeah, I know it's one of the windiest years in history. This is now the third year in a row of spring dust storms here in Illinois. We can't change the weather, but we can change some of our practices. At CropTech, we have many customers who are great stewards of their land and were able to keep their soil in place on Friday. If your soil was deposited in Lake Michigan on Friday and you want to change that, we can help. We will walk you through a systems approach to protect your ground while maintaining that yield. Let's pick that worst field that blew on Friday and work together to implement practices that'll eliminate this from happening in the future. There are many tools in the toolbox that we can use, many ways to get to the same results. But we need to have that conversation, and we'll need to change before this will happen. What a blessing, the rain this week. Reports of 1 to 3 inches in most places. This rain solved a lot of problems for future service calls, not to mention dust storms. We've had several rootless corn issues where corn is wilting and flopping in the wind. The two main causes, besides the dry weather, were sidewall smearing, where the slot opened up, and not enough down pressure on the closing wheels. Spike closing wheels run in tilled or strip-tilled fields had the most issues. Now, with the rain, this will help correct it, and those crown roots will take off and grow again. The dry conditions also brought some starter burn and spring and hydrous burn. This too, the rain will help. We've had several calls this week on herbicide carryover, showing up in both corn and beans, and some in wheat. Now again, this is due to the dry June last year and the dry spring this year. This too, the recent rains will help. Cutworms are still cutting, so we need to keep an eye on them. In our plots, a 3/6 bean that Matt planted on March 14th started flowering on May 21st. This will be a huge yield potential. These beans are now R1, so remember when it comes to post-herbicide applications on these early beans, we need to be careful with what and how we spray them. If we wait to spray them at R2 with a burner and a non-GMO bean, we'll be knocking off our first flowers and pods. These pods are our premium yield pods. So pest teams need to be scouting these fields, staying on top of it. Make sure these beans are getting sprayed not only by weed size, but the stage of that bean. Everyone needs to take time this weekend to stop and honor in some way the great men and women of this country who gave all for our freedom. Without these amazing Americans, I am sure farming in this great country would look a lot different. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.